Hey everyone, it's Max Trujillo, one of the co-hosts of the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast, here to say thank you to all of our listeners for the last 3 years that we've been doing this show. We've released 202 episodes as it stands now, and we have a lot more to come in the new year. We're excited for it all. Matt and I started this December 1st, 2016, in hopes of just really getting to know the food and beverage culture of this area. Matt being from New York, me being from LA. It was really interesting to see what was happening, and wow, so much has happened in 3 years. So thank you for the support. We are pushing forward with so much more in the new year in 2020. And I want to take a quick moment to give a huge thanks to our sponsors, both from the beginning and to now, whether it was Food Scene or the Curate app, Social House Vodka, Van Daughtry Consulting, Michael's English Muffins, Larry's Coffee, Hungry Harvest, Happy Hour Vitamins, Bestow Baked Goods, Meredith College, Johnston County Visitors Bureau, Laura Harris Realty, The Forest Firm, and many more, including our current sponsors like Triangle Wine Company and Proof Alcohol Ice Cream. And we're excited for new sponsors that are coming on, like the Folks Foundation and the Butcher's Market. You'll learn more about them in the coming episodes, and we look forward to a beautiful and exciting holiday season going into 2020. So without further ado, here's the show.
You are listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. Thank you for downloading and subscribing. Coming to you virtually live from high atop the historic Raleigh building in beautiful downtown Raleigh. The NCF&B takes the listener behind the scenes to tell the stories of the people that contribute to the creation of the food and beverage community of North Carolina. And now, the misfits in the dish pit, the faces of the front. They are Max Trujillo and Matthew Weiss.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your temporary co-host, Bobby McFarland.
Oh, and I am also your co-host, Lauren Kruchten, a.k.a. The Kraken.
There it is, The Kraken. And we are here with Chef Chris Coleman. We are not at home. We are not in the confines of the kitchen studios in downtown Raleigh. No, we went on a little trip out to the Queen City to see our good friend, Chris Coleman, in Charlotte at his new venture, which is being built like literally 20 feet away from where we sit, the Goodyear House. Yeah. And welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah. So Matt Weiss is not here right now because he's tending to the children or, doing some fun things. But we thought on this trip to come down to Charlotte, we would bring some friends of the podcast. Lauren, the Kraken, has done social media for the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast for a long time now, and many of the show notes you have read have come by her type. And if you listen to the show a bunch of times, you would know that Bobby McFarland is not only mentioned, but many times on the show as a co-host or like a culinary consultant, if you will.
Yeah, like a quasi-expert on some things. You brought me on for that meat episode, and you were like, we tried to bring on a meat expert, but we couldn't find one, so we brought Bobby.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. So you're moving up the ranks, Bobby. Yeah, and no, we appreciate it. So, Chris, the last time we had you on the podcast was a really long time ago. It was in the infancy of the NCF&B. I think it was episode 17, and back then,
Charlotte Week.
It was Charlotte Week. We had Ben Philpott, we had Stefan Hubner, Brian LaRusso, Matthew Krenz. What a good time. And back then, for a little point of reference, Chris and I both essentially worked for the same company, Summit Hospitality, who owned the Asbury and the Dunhill Hotel in Uptown Charlotte. And I worked for Midtown Grill out in Raleigh. That's how we got to know each other on a couple of conference calls at some awards galas, a lot of post-drinking, and got to know each other. If you want to know Chris's whole story, you can check into episode 17 where he was a chef at 21 at the McNinch House, found himself at the Asbury working at a pretty progressive restaurant. If you haven't been there, it's pretty phenomenal. And then, of course, you went to Stoke at the Marriott City Center, am I correct?
Yeah, Charlotte Marriott City Center. We had opened Stoke. I think we were open for about 3 or 4 months when we recorded episode 17.
You had just opened. Stoke was famously known for stoking the fire, open air cooking,
Right.
like very rustic. Is that what we were saying?
Yeah, it's rustic. It was wood fired cooking. It kind of made me appreciate what went into cooking, because it was the first time I had ever worked with live fire. So learning how to cook with live fire and kind of what you could do with it after the fire had died down a smidge, and that was a lot of fun. The kitchen was in the middle of the dining room, so we could watch. We literally had tables on three sides of the kitchen.
Yeah, you were like performing out there.
Right. It was almost like, it's funny, I was talking with my wife about this morning, actually. It was like being, on stage every single night. It was a show. So it was a lot of fun. And I was there for about 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah, so that kind of begs the question, in watching your career, you were working at a small independent restaurant, and then you went to a larger hotel company in Summit. And then the natural progression was that you went to the largest
hotel here in the world.
In the world of Marriott. And so I guess and not trying to put labels on everybody, but I put you in the boxes. That's Chris is now a hotel chef.
Right.
Like that's what he's doing. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just he's doing large scale, massive outlets. He's like, there are not a lot of people that can handle that type of production and like a million plates spinning at once.
Yeah.
But that's what I knew of you as doing. And so now we're sitting literally across right next door to what the Goodyear House will be, which is not what the Marriott or the Stoke was. So I got to ask you, like, what was going on? Why are you doing this?
So I'm doing this for a number of reasons. I'm excited about this project. I have worked almost my entire career in Uptown Charlotte. So this will be my first foray into being a chef at a restaurant that's in a neighborhood. So I'm most excited about that and about meeting my neighbors and we've already met several of our business neighbors. We have started to meet some of our residential neighbors around us. The guy behind us, his entire backyard is a giant garden, and he's excited about growing stuff for us. So it'll be like literally backyard to table.
Nice.
This NoDa area is about to explode. The light rail just opened up into NoDa, and we've got something like 2,000 or 3,000 apartment units being built right now as we speak, within a half a square mile radius of us. So this neighborhood itself is poised to be the next kind of south end of Charlotte.
Yeah, I was trying to describe to Lauren and Bobby on the way down here, like NoDa, North Davidson, right?
Yep.
It's a hipster spot, right?
Yeah, it is. It's a
cool spot.
We've been calling this like the Brooklyn of Charlotte.
Because
it is kind of the hipster spot. It is a very artsy neighborhood as well. There's a ton of artists who live in the community. We have several art studios. There's places to go see live music in this neighborhood, which there's not a lot of that in Charlotte.
You're right down the street from Haberdish, which is an awesome spot.
Haberdish, good restaurant. Cabo Fish Tacos, been there for years. Great fish tacos. There's a lot of stuff going on and a lot of stuff that's been building over the last 15 years or so. It's funny because I actually grew up coming down to this neighborhood. There used to be a bar literally a stone's throw from where Goodyear House is going to be, called Fat City. And in high school I was in a punk band, and I was the lead singer, and we used to go to Fat City because it was kind of a rock and roll punk bar. We used to go every weekend, and probably shouldn't say this on a recording, but
say it.
They would serve 16-year-old kids, so we were
iced
getting
coffee in a can.
Yes, of course, Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
So we would we'd get PBRs, and we could watch awesome bands that were about to kind of break through a little bit, and then we were invited to play there a few times. So I grew up, this is 20 years ago now, coming to this neighborhood and hanging out in this neighborhood and thinking it was a really, really cool place, although it was pretty seedy at the time. There was about
though.
It was about a block and a half that was kind of like safe after dark. The rest of it, you didn't really want to walk outside of this like 2-block radius. But so it's kind of cool to make that full circle and be opening a restaurant, where I can literally see the spot that I used to hang out in.
So let's get into that, because before we turn on the recorder, Chris invited us into the Goodyear House to see the progress that's being made. I mean, Bobby, Lauren, you guys saw it for you can see what it's going to ultimately be. I mean, there's still dust on the floors and they're still, putting the finishing touches, but it's beautiful, and it is an actual house.
Right.
People lived there. I think you said 7 children.
Yeah, we actually met. We had a lady of, she's a relative of, her mom grew up in this house and lived here from like the 20s to the 60s, and said that there were 7 children who lived in this tiny,
it's
mill
just
house.
like one large bedroom, or one large
basically.
living room.
Yeah. And we've expanded that. We kind of blew out the back of it and added a bar on. We built a side building. We've got a really cool outdoor patio and outdoor bar that we've built onto it. So the house has grown, exponentially from what it was. But I remember the first time I ever saw it, it literally was a tiny little mill house with, front yard and a backyard and everything. So to see where it is now is crazy.
It has this nice authenticity to it, though. I think it's really tastefully done. And
yeah, I mean the project itself. So it's me, it's our GM Sean Potter, and the owner of the property, the owner of the house, AJ Klink, are all partners in it. And AJ bought this house back in 2012 with a vision to turn it into a restaurant. And life happened along the way. He got married, had a couple kids. Started focusing a lot on his commercial real estate business, which took off for him, which was ultimately good for opening a restaurant. You've got some financial support there. But for the last 7 years, he's been thinking about this project. So the details and hopefully that authenticity that those details will help provide, have all been planning for slowly kind of building for 7 years.
And you mentioned Sean as well, being another member. He was running the front of the house for Stoke.
Right.
So the both of you came over as a package deal?
Well, Sean left Stoke back in January of this year, so 2019, to do his own consulting thing and kind of just tread out on his own. He was done with Marriott. He enjoyed his time there, but was ready to start something new. Mm-hmm. Took me a little bit longer. I left in August. And honestly, we met AJ about 20 months ago at this point, so about a year and a half ago, who, we would just been introduced through a friend, a mutual friend, to kind of help him along and help him see this vision come to life. Neither one of us, I think, were interested in joining the project, but we were happy to give AJ free advice and kind of free consultation. But then we couldn't shake the bug. Like it was like we're giving this guy all this info. We're giving them, this is what needs to happen next, and this is how you need the kitchen layout to be. And I think that it finally just wore us down. And AJ said, "Well, come on board the team," and we both signed on in August.
It's funny being that Bobby's on the show with us today too, that both Bobby and I helped consult on a brewery in Raleigh, Y Hill Kitchen and Brewing. And as we were building it and putting it together, it's like, oh, we're kind of making the restaurant we always wanted to work at.
Right.
And we were just always consultants, never to be full time. And then there was like, do we stay? Do they want us to stay? And then I think they kind of do. But it's like you get really married to a project as you're putting it on. And then if people are actually listening to you for your advice on how things are going, then you're making the decisions that you feel are the right decisions for the business. And so that made sense that you decided, hey, man, I want to be a part of this.
And there's definitely some of that to it. I mean, I felt like a lot of the he was asking us some big picture questions. He was asking us some very minute kind of detail questions. So it almost was like we were helping him open, the restaurant we always wanted to open.
AJ's a pretty slick guy. He's
super smart.
I'm gonna backdoor this thing.
Super smart. Yeah.
But this makes sense. So I also, of knowing of you, saying I knew you as the hotel chef, that's a very small aspect of what I think. But I even told Lauren and Bobby on our little 3-hour jaunt down here that I look at Chris is Charlotte food scene incarnate. Like, you have been here since the food scene, like your age. I remember you mentioning this on the podcast back in the day, that basically since you were born until now has been like the evolution of the food culture, because prior to that it was just like diners and steakhouses in Charlotte, and they just serviced the financial departments, financial industry of the area. But now it has a life and it has more soul to it. And so this feels right to me that you're working in a place that is of Charlotte, in a neighborhood, in a home, and it's like, this is where you're from. So like you are embodying this area. That's got to have played into the whole point of you coming here.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something that has, kind of influenced the decision to do this. I did grow up here in Charlotte and spent most of my time in the Mountain Island Lake community. Kind of is where I still live.
How far away is that?
It's about 15, 20 minutes, depending on traffic, from here. But I would visit my grandparents' farm every summer, and they lived in a very small town, and it had a very small town feel with a main street and shops and all that. Mount Holly is the closest suburb to me, and it has a very small kind of main street feel. NoDa is like the main street of Charlotte. Like this neighborhood, it feels like a small community within a very large city.
Will that affect the way you write this menu? Like cooking for a neighborhood crowd versus an urban crowd?
Very much so. We want to feel like a main street restaurant for this community. So we are very conscious of that in every decision that we make, that we're doing this for the community. We're doing this for our neighbors, for the residents of this community. We want to be a neighborhood restaurant. And the way we've talked about it is, neighborhood restaurants should offer familiarity. They should offer hospitality, first and foremost. We're not cooking or making drinks to try to razzle dazzle and show off what we can do. We're doing this out of love of serving people.
But you're going to show off a little bit.
We're going to show off a little bit, but we want people to eat well. We want people to make those awesome memories with families or friends or whatever. So it's hospitality and familiarity first and foremost.
You did a good job of connecting to your roots, even back at the Asbury when I was looking. I mean, that was a pretty fancy restaurant, just to say it that way. It's like small, very manicured tweezer plates, if you will. But I still remember Mama's biscuits, and you're connected back to your grandma and doing that. So you've always kind of kept and held true to who you are as a chef. So what does that mean? I know Bobby's probably anxious to know too. So what kind of food, what are we looking at?
Sure. So I think my brand, so to speak, has always been like modern Southern. And it's kind of exploring what the South is right now, and maybe what the South can become. And a lot of that is looking to the past, like using heritage ingredients and heirloom grains and, really cool produce and really cool proteins that we can find in the area, but then marrying it with the flavors of the cultures that are moving to Charlotte. So right now I'm pretty heavily influenced with a lot of Japanese and Korean ingredients. I'm really getting into, or have been for the last year or so, Eastern African and Northern African spices and spice blends. We've got different regions of Latin America popping into this menu.
Can you give us an example of where some of those flavors infiltrate maybe a more common dish that we would be familiar with?
Sure. So a dish that I'm super excited about for this menu is, and sorry for the construction noise outside.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's great sounds, but just so you know, like they're literally building this place right now.
We are going to have a barbecue chicken on the menu, and a great neighborhood restaurant should probably have a barbecue chicken on the menu, right? But it's going to be a larger format, family style dish. So you get a whole chicken that's been spatchcocked, smoked, and then grilled, and then glazed in a Coca-Cola barbecue sauce. There's this old Southern tradition of pouring peanuts into a glass bottle of Coke or Pepsi or something, and it's a snack. So you can drink the Coke or the Pepsi that's been slightly salted from the peanuts, and then the peanuts in the bottom get softer and sweeter from sitting in the Coke. This is like a working man's snack. So to play off of that, we have a salsa macha, which is from northern Mexico. It's peanuts, chilies. Ours has Benny seeds in it, oil and vinegar, and that's it. But it's spicy, it's nutty, it's earthy. it's kind of a fun nod to that peanut and Coke tradition.
For those who don't know, Benny seeds are basically sesame seeds that you can get locally, right?
Right. Yeah. So it's the cousin to the sesame seed. And it's got 60% more fat than a sesame seed does in it. But then to serve it, so you're getting this whole chicken that's been glazed, crispy skin, glazed with this Coca-Cola barbecue sauce, served with a little cup of salsa matcha. But then we're serving it also with a bowl of what we're calling chicken rice. So it's Carolina gold rice that's been seasoned out with schmaltz and some sesame oil, and then a bunch of Bibb lettuce and house-made pickles and shredded cabbage and watercress. And so you kind of build your own little lettuce wraps.
Yeah, that's super interactive.
So super interactive, fun, simple food. I mean, again, nothing that I've described is very out there, but it's this, we're taking barbecue chicken. We're taking this kind of very specific northern Mexican salsa that's peanut based, and then kind of that fun Chinese American tradition of lettuce wraps. And
it isn't super out there, but like it's almost more creative,
right?
Than if you just took a bunch of fancy stuff that nobody's heard of and tweezed it together.
We kind of, I mean, we're cooking for ourselves. To be honest, man, we're cooking for our residents and for ourselves. I'm cooking the type of food now that I want to eat every single day.
But not unlike when you hear a musician finally say that they've kind of hit their peak or whatever, was when they started writing music that they wanted to hear, that they want to listen to. And that ends up being the most honest, right? It's don't get in your head and think like, what are food trends? What did Food and Wine write up about last year? Oh, this year is the year of the cauliflower or something. Who cares? It's
and that's something. I've got 2 very young sous chefs coming on board who are still figuring out what their voices are as cooks and as chefs. So I keep having to kind of tamp down some of their ideas and say that would work at Stoke or at Asbury or at one of the other restaurants in town, Bardo or Stanley or somewhere. That's not really who Goodyear House is. Like, remember who Goodyear House is, and we're cooking food that we want to eat every single day. There's no flowers, there's no tweezers, there's no dots and drizzles. It's just simple food. A lot of it served in bowls because I love eating out of bowls. So it's just really simple food that you eat with your hands and your.
Is there any restaurant, like, it doesn't even have to be in North Carolina, but is there any place that you've gone to recently on any travels that is somewhat of a muse to you, that you're like, this is kind of what inspired this type of food?
I don't think I can point to any one restaurant that does that. I think that there are certain restaurants and several restaurants that I've been to over the last year or two where there's a feeling almost in that restaurant that you are instantly super comfortable, and the food is a lot of fun. There's no pretension about it. They're using really good ingredients. It's quality. I mean, we're buying some of the best ingredients we can possibly find, most of them local. But they're not trying to show off. They're just making really tasty food. I feel like Wild Air was kind of like that in New York.
That makes sense, and it's kind of an amalgamation. Yeah. I will say, even just walking through the place, it does feel comfortable. Like, it feels like, I mean, it is a home. It's a house, but it is a home. And so it's got that nice open vibe. Like you even told us right in the beginning, there's kind of a breezeway. You just walk in. It's kind of quasi indoor, outdoor. There's definitely a big play to the outdoor patio. But then, of course, there's great dining rooms on the inside, 2 different ones. And then the kitchen is where your kitchen would be in the normal house. It's just you kind of blew it out a little bit. Talk to us a little bit even about that, because you, contrary to what I thought when you were at the Marriott, I just assumed that you just had the biggest kitchen ever because it's the Marriott, and I just figured like it was all the horsepower that you needed, But you even said this place is going to be actually a little bit bigger. We've
got more firepower than I had at Stoke. I mean, Marriott has a giant kind of belly of the beast prep kitchen with a ton of firepower, but that's kind of where everything's coming out of. That's the restaurant, that's the bar, that's the coffee shop,
room service.
It all comes out of that one kitchen. And then our finishing line in Stoke, we had 6 burners, we had a French top, we had one fryer and a wood burning oven. Here we designed the space with plenty of firepower. I have 12 burners, I have 2 big fryers, I have a grill, I have a plancha, 2 double ovens. So I've got it's a smaller, tighter space, but it's been designed in such a way that we can pump out a lot of food.
Can you explain to people what the difference between a plancha and a French top is?
Sure. So a plancha, is also a griddle, or a flat top grill. And then a French top has usually has 1 or 2 points of flame, so it gets hotter closer to the eye. So it's almost like, a stove, but spread out over a flat top, if that's a good
So you
way
can
to-
have different temperatures on the same.
Right, different
spot.
temperatures on the same spot.
And you'll drop like pots and pans on that and cook
Right.
directly on the metal.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, a plancha or a griddle flat top, you're cooking your stuff right on the metal. A French top, you're generally cooking in pots and pans.
So did you have anything to do with the design of the kitchen at Stoke, or is this the first kitchen you've actually kind of helped build?
This is the first kitchen I've actually helped build.
That's got to be
Stoke was-
gratifying.
Yeah. Stoke was kind of baked when I started. I started with Marriott 3 months before we opened Stoke, so all that was already kind of done. And I've kind of been. I won't say this is just me in the kitchen because I had some help with Goodyear House, but I definitely said, well, we need an additional 6 burners, or we need 2 sandwich flip top refrigerators. We need this, that, or the other. I remember we have a steam well, and like a year ago when I first started looking at the kitchen, I was like, we don't need a steam well. That's gross. We're not making cafeteria food. But now I'm like, I think I'm smarter than I was a year ago. I'm like, there's some use for that. Like there's a reason to have a steam well in a restaurant kitchen. So it can be used right, and you can still make fresh, delicious food that doesn't sit there all day.
Yeah, you just keep your finishing sauces in
Right.
there.
Yeah. Soups and that kind of stuff.
I'm excited for you, man. This is cool. Like I see the look in your eyes it's just, you think about people that have been working in this business for however long they've been doing it, and you yourself have been doing it since you were a wee lad.
Yeah.
And this is your jam. Like this is your place. You've been a part of many spots, and everyone knows you as the exec chef wherever you've gone. But I really see like this is your band.
Yeah. No, I think this is the first place where I've gotten to really kind of voice everything that I want to voice about the restaurant. Asbury was great. I loved building the Asbury and opening that, but obviously we're opening it for a company. And I mean, you worked for the same company. They can be very vocal about what they like, what they don't like.
No.
So there was,
You know what you ought to do? You know what you ought to do? Mac and cheese, you ought to do it.
right.
No, we're laughing. It's good times. It's good times. Actually, I got to, 3 years now removed from working there, I realized in hindsight, like those guys actually gave a pretty long leash to what
they did.
What was done.
They totally did.
I think they also understood, even though it is like a big hotelier and all, or semi-big in the area, that the only way to truly get the most out of the people was to let them be people.
Right.
And we did get to do a lot of stuff, but then at the same time, they're like, we're also running a hotel,
Right.
or we're also trying to make a profit. So, can you get those food costs down to 32%?
And so a lot of the same kind of thing happened at Marriott, but bigger, right? I mean, so part of opening Charlotte Marriott City Center was this was the beta program for Marriott. We were going to try to redefine what food and beverage was for the largest hotel brand in the world. And so there was a lot of fun, and I got to kind of express myself, but within their box. They said, this is what we want Stoke to be. This is what we want Coco and the director to be. This is what we want our room service to look like. Express yourself all you want within this box.
Within 12 pieces of flair.
And so
It's interesting that they made that decision to make it a wood fire kitchen, because you think about the biggest hotel chain, one of the biggest corporations, choosing one of the most analog cooking methods as
unpredictable.
cooking
methods.
It's like totally not an oxymoron, but it contradicts itself almost.
Yeah, but again, there are still humans behind every decision made, and I think like the whole thought was, let's try to make this real.
Well,
and they did a great job. I mean,
they did a
Stoke
good
is
job.
a pretty
Stoke's
badass
a great
place
restaurant.
to be.
I had a lot of fun working there, and a lot of fun working with all the people that I worked with there. It was a great job. But this is the place where it's myself, it's Sean. We're food and beverage professionals, and then AJ, who freely admits that he knows very little about restaurants. So he's
y'all,
kind of
y'all to make some mac and
right.
cheese.
So he's he will have opinions, as anyone would, but he's kind of letting us, really build the ship, then steer the ship, and then correct the path of the ship. Once we get open, but it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
So when we were talking first, way back in the day, you were talking about, it's funny, you were talking about how Charlotte, even though being a pretty well-developed city, its food culture kind of wasn't there, and it was like starting to happen. But man, 3 years down the line, like that is not the case any longer. There is so much happening in Charlotte, and people are coming from out of state. People are really like booming into the next level. In fact, like Lauren works for Raleigh Magazine. She writes a lot of articles. I write an article every now and then, but I wrote one about how the carpetbaggers are coming to town, right? And it was about like celebrity chefs or just any like big corporations coming into Raleigh to kind of take advantage of like it's hot right now, and Charlotte's there too. So how and where you're of this town, so what do you say to those that kind of want to come in from the outside and be a part of this culture, and how do you play nice with them?
So, this is a really, really cool scene to be a part of because we have all been living and working here for a while now and have developed the scene into where it's starting to get some national recognition, which is something that we've all been striving for the last 5-10 years. And I've talked to a few chefs who have come in to the scene already as established chefs. And I mean, I was talking to one last night who is thinking about making the move to Charlotte from another city. And, I was like, dude, if you plug into the city and if you become a part of the city instead of just thinking you're a big fish, this city will embrace you. I mean, the culinary community will embrace you. I think we want everyone who lives here and works here to live here and work here and breathe here and take their kids to our schools and cheer for our Hornets and Panthers. And, maybe that's just me. Maybe that's what I want them to do.
Yeah. Cam Newton's going to start next week though, right?
Please, dear God.
Well, so Bobby came down here from the New York area with Jeff Sizer when they opened Royale, a great French restaurant in Raleigh. But it wasn't like, uh-oh, here come these New Yorkers and doing whatever. It was like more like, oh, thank God, we're getting some talent from outside to come in and throw down. And Royale in Raleigh is one of the best restaurants in town. It's great, but also there isn't like a cockiness about it. Jeff is a cool dude, and Bobby had worked there for a good amount of time. He was their chef de cuisine. And there was just like no, I want to be a part of this. And you guys wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah, Jeff just wanted to move his family to where his wife was from. And honestly, Jeff just likes to have fun and cook. He's smiling when he's working hard, when the restaurant's busy. It wasn't like I want to go down and dominate. It was, this sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the important thing, though, is the things that make these cities sexy to the outside looking in need to hold true. And if we lose sight of that, then the city then becomes the places that we loathed and moved away from. Right. So we have to and I say we because I'm not from North Carolina, I'm from California. So I'm one of those carpetbaggers, if you will. But I look at it like we have to respect this state, this city, this culture, whatever you want to say, and go, no, we should serve sweet tea. We should not poke our nose up at pimento cheese, and we should embrace the things that are of this city. Meanwhile, add to it.
Right.
And, not go, oh man, this place is all just Eastern North Carolina barbecue. It's like, no, well, yeah, but and things.
Well, I think you take a look at someone like Mike Knoll at Bardo here in Charlotte, which is it's the hottest restaurant in Charlotte right now. He came from Schwa in Chicago and brings that sensibility with him. Very small plates, lots of tweezers, lots of garnishes. a menu that's like 12 to 14 items long. And everything is super artistic, but he has plugged in and started working with local ingredients to do that. So he is helping to take Charlotte's food scene, using some of the traditions, quote traditions of some of our ingredients and things, but pushing it forward. And that's what, at the same time he's plugged in, he's got his family here. He is showing up at like the chef, the Culinary Guild meetings and stuff. He is
that's right. Yeah,
doing
that's
some of that stuff. So he's
and training local talent.
Yeah, and training
bringing
talent.
those standards up for the line cooks.
Right. So as long as chefs are moving to Charlotte and are going to be a part of Charlotte, we're going to welcome them with open arms.
Yeah, because then that ends up being like a destination spot.
Yeah.
For like the graduates of the CIA and like the culinarians too. Yeah, but
So I'm a member of the Piedmont Culinary Guild, which started in Charlotte. Now we have a chapter in Asheville. We have a chapter in Winston-Salem. We have a chapter in Triangle. But the goal is to promote kind of unity within the culinary scene, to promote our different scenes nationally. But then, we have a saying, it's all ships rise. Because if someone, this year we had on the beard list for Charlotte, we had Joe Kindred, we had Greg Collier for the first time, and Paul at the Stanley got a nod for Best New Restaurant.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's 3 in 1 year for Charlotte. You guys have freaking Ashley Christensen there, but for us, this is exactly. For us, this is a huge deal, and to watch chefs like them do well is only going to push other chefs and push other restaurants to do better.
Yeah, and I mean, I did have a little bit of pride or arrogance, whatever, by thinking that Triangle was maybe a little ahead of you all in the culinary scene about 3 years ago when we started this podcast. I was like, there's a lot going on, but I mean, come on, Durham's got there's so much in Durham, Chapel Hill, this and that. But I got to be honest, I think it's just the state now. I mean,
it's the state.
Asheville is crazy,
right.
But Charlotte is sneaky because Charlotte went from 0 to 60, and now it's I don't know, maybe it's because the city is so massive. There's a lot of places you can live. There's a booming economy in here, so it's pretty attractive for people to come to. And if you are from the big city, this is not that separate from what you're used to.
Yeah, I think part of it too is that while trying to build our culinary scene, we have kind of turned our focus away from other cities. We're not really trying to compare ourselves to Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill. We're not trying to compare ourselves to Asheville or Charleston or Atlanta or anywhere anymore. 5 years ago, every chef who worked here was watching what all these other cities were doing.
Yeah.
And I think that there was a realization about 5 years ago, we're not going to make ourselves better by doing that. So let's focus inward. Let's turn our eyes into our city and really just make our city awesome. And that's why Charlotte has boomed so quickly over the last few years, is because we don't really care what anyone does right now.
Yeah.
We just care about what we are doing. And by we, I don't mean just myself. I'm watching what every other chef in town is doing, and I'm encouraging them, and I'm supporting them, and they're supporting me and encouraging me, and we're just trying to make each other better.
So with that, going back to just NoDa in this area, how do you want the community to perceive the Goodyear House in its neighborhood? I mean, you've got quite a few other restaurants in here, right. So where does this fit?
Well, I think we want to add to the scene. We're not coming in trying to dominate. We're not coming in trying to take over the community. We've got some good spots here. So we just want to kind of add something that's not here already. Havertich is fantastic. Their fried chicken's great. Mm-hmm. They kind of do like Southern food. That's what they do. Cabo fish taco is fish tacos. It's Baja style fish tacos. Been that way for 15 or 20 years now. Room and Board's about to open. There's a new kind of barbecue Tex-Mex spot that's about to open. Sabor's here, and they're great kind of fast casual taco place. We're trying to offer something to the community that they don't already have, and that's kind of a great just neighborhood hangout spot. We've got we're gonna have killer beer, killer cocktails, a really concise but solid wine list. The kids menu, my kids helped to design our kids menu, so it's a kids menu for kids, made by kids.
Oh, that's cool.
What they put on that?
A lot of the classics. We've got like mac and cheese. We've got chicken tenders.
Y'all can make
and
that
stuff.
mac and cheese.
Right.
See, you listen.
But then like they wanted kind of like a Lunchables type thing. So we've got a dish that's like Munchables, and it's basically a kid's charcuterie and cheese board, right? I mean, that's
awesome.
essentially what it is.
Yeah.
You know, there's like a cool broccoli and cheese dish on there. So it's really simple, classic food, but it's all going to be made from scratch and done really well. You know, so we want to offer that neighborhood spot where you can come and eat on a Tuesday and bring your kids and not feel like you're out of place. It's not a place where you're gonna have to save up and go on a special occasion. It's just a really kick-ass restaurant in a cool neighborhood.
That's awesome, man. Well, I think we're going to close it down here. We've got a big day planned. You mentioned that Greg Collier and Joe Kindred as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what timeline these podcasts will all be released, but we're also going to enjoy their fantastic dinner tonight that they're doing at Hello Sailor, and talk with those gents as well as to why they're collaborating. So what a fun experience. Like, yeah, Charlotte is just popping. So if you haven't come out here, you know, go to the Goodyear House when it's open, which would probably be early 2020?
No, it should be by the end of the year. We're hopeful for
Christmas
right
time?
around Thanksgiving,
cool.
early December.
Oh, so sooner than I expected. Awesome. That's great. So yeah, go down and NoDa for Lauren and Bobby, and for Matthew, wherever he may be. Matt would say to come to Charlotte and eat and drink merrily.
Thanks for listening to the NCF&B podcast. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes, and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.